We are all results of our childhood, I think. And I think that sort of transformed me in a way where my life journey has, taken shape, where really sort of seeing this whole notion of what it means to have power and not to have power, what it means to have voice and not to have voice. Yeah, I felt that firsthand. And I think the thing is, we all deal with it kind of differently. And what, for me, the big thing really was that I just felt over time, one thing that kept on coming up to me was sort of the economic challenges. And I think, again, I think this is what happens when you don't grow up with much. So, um, and that sort of became a bit of a quest for me. And I think circumstances in life happen. But um, how do you actually make one of the most powerful systems in the world, which is finance, actually be working for everyone? So I think I do feel that it was not an epiphany that I woke up one day and said, oh my goodness, finance has to do good now, right? But it really was the fact that this journey that went over for decades and really sort of that took me to Wall Street, at a very early age and a time when there were very few women, forget women of color. And then really sort of saying, how do I take this and really be able to connect literally the back street, the underserved communities, which I did. And I think for me, sort of impact investing, when it all sort of came together in 2008, and I was part of the group that, when that coined the term, etc. But I think what was really rewarding for me was at last my different lives were coming together, and others were in it, not only myself.
Hello, my extraordinary women friends. I love the story of a powerful, wickedly smart woman. And today's guest, Durreen Shanaaz, is just that. Durreen is a visionary disruptor. She's reshaping the financial landscape while championing the marginalized. As a Bangladeshi-American entrepreneur, Shahnaz has boldly launched the world's first stock exchange exclusively for social enterprises, revolutionizing our perceptions of finance and investment. Now she unveils her remarkable journey and insights in her book, The Defiant Optimist, revealing how she found her voice and triumphed over a lifetime of silent rebellion. Today, we talk about her journey from silence to empowerment, the impact investing ecosystem, and how it's evolving financial markets for the future, and so much more. Get ready to be inspired. Let's meet Durreen Shanaaz. Well, welcome to Extraordinary Women Radio, Durreen. It's great to have you here today.
Cami, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure and honor.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
I'm really excited to hear all of your good wisdom and your stories and all the good work that you're doing around the world. Where are you calling us from today?
I'm actually in Woodstock, New York. So,
Yeah.
and yes, it is as they call it, the most famous small town in America. And it is all that you hear and much more. It's gorgeous here, and people are very kind. And I just, this is my other home. So
And
I have a
Singapore, you
few
go back and
homes.
forth between Singapore and there, right?
Exactly, exactly. So this is the American side of me, which sort of soaks it all in, in terms of, the world can be a better place, and kind of being around people who have the same thoughts. So no, it's great. I love coming back here.
And how often are you in the States then?
I'm actually in the States probably about 3, 4 times a year,
Okay.
but I come and spend kind of a good chunk in the summer here at Woodstock. So
A good place
which
to
is
be.
which is really nice. And again, I'm
Yeah.
very blessed that I can do that, and
Yeah.
just wonderful people around me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Let's start with your journey. Let's hear a little bit of your story. And I know you have this journey from silence to empowerment, right?
Hmm.
This space where you really that led you to the world of impact investing. Tell us a bit of your story. How you
Sure,
found
sure.
yourself in the space you're in.
Yeah, thanks, Kemi. So I have had an interesting journey. So I am an American. I'm an immigrant here, but I came in a very different way. So I actually am originally from Bangladesh, and grew up there. During my first memories are of this big war that happened in 1971 when we split up from Pakistan, and it was a very bloody war. 3 million people were killed. So my first memories are of war. And in terms of how, again, it's however you cut it, men start war and women are the ones who are actually, you know,
Healing it.
dealing with it and putting the country and the society back together. So so I think, for me, that was very formative in terms of growing up in a country that was, sort of post-war, everything was destroyed, and really sort of seeing what it meant to have so little, but at the same time, even with that little, we always felt we had so much. And then really sort of almost in a macro level, seeing how the country was being shaped by everyone outside of the country, other countries. And in the same way, growing up as a girl in our society, how I had no voice in terms
Right.
of, what I had to do and what I wanted to do with my life, because everyone and had an opinion, and especially the men. So what's very interesting is, again, we are all results of our childhood, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that sort of transformed me in a way
Certainly.
where my life journey has, taken shape, where really sort of seeing this whole notion of what it means to have power and not to have power, what it means to have voice and not to have voice. And I think
And
for
you
me,
felt that firsthand.
yeah, I felt that firsthand. And I think the
Yeah.
thing is, we all deal with it kind of differently. And what, for me, the big thing really was that I just felt over time, one thing that kept on coming up to me was sort of the economic challenges. And I think, again, I think this is what happens when you don't grow up with much. So, um, and that sort of became a bit of a quest for me. And I think circumstances in life happen. But how do you actually make one of the most powerful systems in the world, which is finance, actually be working for everyone? So I think I do feel that it was not an epiphany that I woke up one day and said, oh my goodness, finance has to do good now, right? But it really was the fact that this journey that went over for decades, and really sort of that took me to Wall Street, at a very early age, and a time when there were very few women, forget women of color, and then really sort of saying, how do I take this and really be able to connect literally the back street, the underserved communities, which I did. And I think for me, sort of impact investing, when it all sort of came together in 2008, and I was part of the group that, when that coined the term, etc. But I think what was really rewarding for me was, at last, my different lives were coming together. And others were in it, not only myself. So I think
Mm.
that was very powerful, and I think it's wonderful to see now the space has, close to what, $1 trillion, that has been
Wow. Wow.
deployed. Hmm.
Yeah. And I want to just even point out what you just said. You were part of the group that termed impact investing.
Yes, yes. So
That's so
this was
cool.
in
I didn't know
2008.
that.
Yeah, and it was 2008, right after the financial crisis. So the
Mm-hmm.
Rockefeller Foundation sort of, really took the lead. And I gave a lot of credit to Dr. Judith Rodin, who was the president of the Rockefeller Foundation, who I also like to point out was the
Mm-hmm.
first woman president of an Ivy League school, so which was an extremely big deal. And then she became the president of Rockefeller Foundation, also the first woman. So she really took this leadership role, really supported it in terms of sort of saying, how can we make finance do good? So, and what Rockefeller does is, whenever it comes up with something like this, pulls a group of people together, brings them to Bellagio in Italy, wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous villa, like 500 years old, they own. And you're literally there, just such a pleasure, because you're there for 4 days, just talking to other people and just sort of saying, how do we solve this world problem? So it's just almost like bizarrely intellectual, at the same time so unreal, but also the fact that, wow, something real can come out of it. And it's gorgeous. It's right by Lake Como. Of course, we all tried to see where George Clooney was. Apparently, it was across the lake.
When I was there,
Didn't
I
have a
thought the
sighting.
same thing when I
Yeah,
was at
didn't
Lake
have a
Como.
sighting. That's another added thing to go to Bellagio. Uh, but it was fantastic. And I think what's really rewarding for me is the fact that, sort of being a part of this movement, this global
Yeah.
movement,
Yeah.
and for me to be able to play a role in getting this off the ground in Asia and in Pacific, and now, of course, we're doing work in Africa as well, and and it's nice to think that we have started something that is here to stay, right? So,
Right.
and I think, and that's always something that will stay with me. That, oh my God, this was something that I was a part of.
Yeah. So what an honor to be a part of that. And tell us a little bit more about what it is that you built there from, I know
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
you chose
absolutely.
the financial system for a reason.
Yep.
Tell us exactly what
So,
was built
I
there.
have to sort of start a little bit back. And as I said, of course, I started my career in Morgan Stanley in New York. And again, that was also not something that I took lightly when I worked there, because I was very much an activist in college. So I went to Smith. For those of you who know, it's sort of the foremost school for women's rights. And, in the 60s, pretty much everything came out of there, which brought women, I feel like, to the new heights. So very, very proud of my alma mater. And I think when I went there, I just saw this whole new way. I found my voice, and I think it was incredible to be able to sort of experience that. And
Yeah.
I really thought I was going to go into something which, really went deep with economic development and women empowerment, etc. But I think I had this epiphany. If there was any epiphany, I had it in college, which was I actually want to change the system from after knowing what is it all about, rather than kind of
Yeah.
standing in the sideline and sort of trying to get people's attention from basically screaming and shouting. So, which I'm not undermining it. It's important sometimes to
Right.
scream and shout. I did my part, but I really felt that I wanted to be part of the system. And I think that in itself, I always say, if anything shaped me, really was my time at Morgan Stanley, and then going on to literally the last mile and working at Grameen Bank. And Grameen Bank is this, at that time, it was a small little bank in Bangladesh, which gave very, very tiny loans to rural women to start up their own businesses. And I like to sort of, say that I'm really proud that I was a part of that and part of the growth. And years later, Grameen got the Nobel Prize, for its work. And the rest of my life has been really shaped by Morgan Stanley and Grameen Bank. And I think my first company, One Nest, which was in New York, and it was a tech platform for handmade goods, the predecessor of Etsy. And I always say, if I were probably a white man, it would have gone to the new heights. But I think the reality is, for me, that's where I realized that, you know what, if we're going to have economic growth, if you're actually going to help in terms of connecting the different markets in the world, we really need to be working with the small, medium businesses and getting them off the ground.
Yeah.
So, with that background, when I started IIX, which stands for Impact Investment Exchange, it really was, how can we create first the pinnacle, which is a stock exchange, in terms of bringing all these SMEs to it, where their work is appreciated not only just by their financial return, but also the impact that they're creating in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the social and the environmental returns. And I think that for me was very, very important. And the other thing was the fact that I felt very strongly that we created an entire ecosystem around it. So what do I
Yeah.
mean by that? It's really
Yeah.
is the fact that in every single country we would go into, we will have a group of lawyers, a group of accountants, a group of researchers, consultants who actually would be very dedicated in working with us on this. And I think that was actually very smart, because that in itself allowed us to sort of grow in a very putting deep roots in all these countries and being able to galvanize people who, frankly, were, sort of making their own careers also go deeper by working with
Yeah.
us. So,
Yeah.
so I think so. What IX now, we've been around for 14 years. So what we are is really a financial institution. So we have a platform which is very vibrant for basically small medium businesses to raise capital from
Mm-hmm.
investors, and we have now raised over $160 million on
Wow.
that platform itself.
And are
No
you
default,
everywhere in the world, or are you very
everywhere. So your
focused?
listeners, if they are, if they want to raise capital, please do sign up.
I
It's
know
a
somebody
global
I need to
platform.
introduce you to already.
Yes. So basically, the thing is, what we do is anyone can sign up if they're running a small business, but the key here is they also have to put in all the information of the impact they're creating on
Mm-hmm.
another platform we have, which is called Values. So Impact Partners is our sort of the platform, the exchange. And then basically we have values, which measures the impact. And those go hand in hand, because one of the things that we have seen is the fact that the deeper impact that's created, we see the companies operationally perform much, much, much better.
Right.
So,
I
and we
love
have been
that,
able,
right?
yeah,
That's such a
amazing.
powerful statement.
It's a very powerful statement. And I'll tell you, Cami, I mean, even going deeper with that, if you think about it, what happens when you have deep impact with operationally doing well? That means the operational risk is going down. So,
Yeah.
which means as an investor, you actually feel good about it. The fact
Yeah.
that, oh my God, so my investment is actually more secure. So, with our impact partners platforms, as I said, we put out in the market close to 160 million. And then we saw these enterprises kept on coming back to us, right? And they kept on coming back because there were not enough funds, there was not, enough infrastructure for them to be able to raise more capital. And they said, okay, you know what, there's something wrong here in the system. And we also saw that any organization that was working mostly with women, they had the hardest time raising more capital. So that
Absolutely.
is when basically I turned around and I said, okay, we have to create some, you know, structures which will allow these entities to really work with the last mile, bring really women to the, financial markets. And how do we do that? So that's when we created the Women's Livelihood Bonds.
It's
And
called
this was
what?
again,
Say that one again. You created the what? The women's.
it's called the Women's Livelihood Bond.
Oh,
So
cool.
the first bond, so it's literally 100% focused on creating livelihood for women in the last
Mm-hmm.
mile.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, and again, as your readers will, as your, listeners will, when they read the book, The Defiant Optimist, there's a lot around the bond because it was not easy to pull something like this off. And we did it. And so far we have put out every single year a bond in the market. And we have put out in the market now $128 million through these bonds.
Mm-hmm.
The last one was, so we have Women's Livelihood Bond 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 of those. Every single bond is paid on time. Because what we do is we take a group of entities who are focused on creating livelihood for women, create a structure, and basically sell it in the market. And one of our biggest investors is actually Naveen, the TIA-CREF, institutional investors out of the US, which is the Teachers Pension Fund. And I just love the fact that the teachers in the US, I feel teaching is one of the most noble professions. Their pension is actually being paid off by the women, in the last mile. And
Wow.
it's just so powerful. It really is this whole notion of creating, as I say, a whole new table where all of us are sitting across as equals, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. It's not have and have nots. It's not, looking down. It's not looking up. It really is the fact that we all across, we're all sitting around and saying, hey,
Right.
I'm running a
Right.
business. I'm taking a loan. I'll pay it off. And like, oh, hi, I'm retired. I'm saving my money with Naveen and, getting a return on that. So it's just beautiful.
Yeah. And if people are wanting to invest into your stock exchange, can they do that? Or are you
You know
doing?
what, the way to do it is, from the US it was a little tough because of regulations, but the reality is, one, you can be an investor if you sign up, and then we
Mhm.
kind of see if you have the right credentials, because you
Uh-huh.
actually,
You have to have certain
what
level
they
of
call,
credentials.
like, you have to be accredited investors.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we actually have to, and that's sort of, we can't, that's sort of a securities regulation everywhere.
Right.
And then, in terms of investing in the bond, um, yes, they can reach out to us, but also I'm sure with a lot of folks, if they're saving money somewhere, they are investing through us.
Okay.
So basically, it's the Naveen and there are a few other funds who basically buy it from us,
Okay.
the bond.
Excellent. So going
So
through
I
those
think I
those
would
mutual funds.
actually, if your listeners want to be part of it, asking wherever they have their money,
Yeah.
asking them, are you actually buying this bond or not? And if not, they should
Excellent.
be telling them, and we can
Yeah.
help them buy
Yeah.
the bond.
Yeah, that's so cool. I know in my investment strategy with my financial planner, I do choose some impact investing funds.
Right.
So I don't know specifically which ones they are, but I like that our dollars can make a difference that way.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And the fact that, and also that you're getting this back. So we have now put out in the market close to 300 million. And we never had a single loss, Cami.
Wow.
Not a single loss. And I'd like to say that very loudly and clearly.
Yeah.
Um, And I really sincerely believe it is because of the fact that the dollars that we are working with, it creates really deep impact. And when you have deep impact and you're measuring it and you're verifying it with the last mile, which we do, with our values platform, we literally send these mobile text and they write back. If they don't have a phone, we go there in person. And because of all this, the risk of the investment really goes down, and
Yeah.
that's again, that's a real correlation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So none
Yeah.
of this sort of washing, like impact washing, greenwashing, because the reality is if you do it right,
Mm.
it should be linked to your financial return. So
Totally.
so yeah, we're
Totally.
very proud of it.
I
We're
love it.
proud of the fact
I
that
love it.
we've been able to bring women into the financial markets to
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah. So let's talk about your new book, The Defiant Optimist: Daring to Fight Global Inequality, Reinvent Finance, and Invest in Women. Tell us a little bit about your book, and then I want to hear more about what a defiant optimist is. So,
Sure, sure. So the book is really, I would say it's a wonderful combination of being a memoir, a finance book, and then also women empowerment. So when I started writing it, I wrote, God, 4 years ago. It took me a long time because, of course, I'm working full time. Also, I'm a mom. So a lot of writing, very,
yeah.
late at night. But I think the
I
thing
get
is,
it so
what,
much.
yeah, but the book is really about kind of weaving all these three. And what I really wanted to do was really make it real, that for a lot of us, it really is the fact that we always think finance is something so out there that we can't relate to, and especially women. But really sort of saying, it's all very real, the geopolitical setup, the socioeconomic setup. These are all very, very linked, with the financial market. So
Hmm.
I sort of start with, as I said earlier on, sort of my memories of the war and just so it kind of travels kind of my life. But what I did also is bring in all these global sort of situations into it, and
Hmm.
how it impacted my life and how it changed my thinking. But then also very importantly, what I did was bringing in finance so that anyone who doesn't actually know finance, it makes it very understandable for them. So, and I, so far, at least from what I'm hearing from everyone, they're appreciating it. So I'm really, really happy. And defined optimist, I think the reason to kind of say that is because, for one, we do also actually need a lot of optimism now in the world. But the whole word defines, if you think about it, it really is, it has a connotation of obviously, yes, damn it, I don't care, but also it has a lot of courage in that word, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you are almost sort of kind of standing up, against something and
Yeah.
trying to do something about it. So it's that I wanted to capture that and kind
Yeah.
of say, what, in my case, it really was standing up again to a very powerful system, which is the financial system, and really making it work for everyone.
When
Um,
you started to stand up to this financial system that you're deep into Morgan Stanley, you've experienced life. When you really decided, was there a moment that just you decided this was where you were going to put a stake in the ground?
I think for me, maybe the moment was, and I do talk about it in the book, which is my freshman year in college, and I think that's actually when I started thinking about it. When I came to Smith, I, it was God, it was really like for me amazing, and it was like an eye opener, and I got really exposed to a lot of African American writers, which I never did before.
Hmm.
Um, oh, I just loved it. I just loved all the James Baldwin, Alice Walker, all these books that I was reading, um, and in some ways, I could think it also started sort of shaping my thinking, right?
Huh?
I mean,
Yeah.
what it meant to be uh, excluded, which of course I felt more as a someone growing up in a poor country, but this is a group of people in a country which is very wealthy, right? And then at that moment, it was the anti-apartheid movement that was happening, and in across, I would say, a lot of colleges in the U.S., the students were kind of protesting and trying to get the universities to divest from South Africa. So I actually participated in that for Smith, and kind of got really into it and went and was part of the group, in terms of sort of having sit-ins and taking over the administration building, etc. And Smith did divest, from South Africa. And I think for me, that really was something very powerful, that you could actually change people's lives
Mm-hmm.
through basically, financial decision. And if
Yeah.
you think about it, it was not only Smith, many, many, many universities did that. And that was one of the many things that started creating pressure for things to change in South Africa,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
So
know?
you saw that you could create change.
Yes, and create change through basically, this whole financial system.
Yeah.
So I think that probably, I would say, was always stayed with me, and then it was really sort of trying to then replicate that in many many ways, and of course, almost 40 years later, I'm where I am.
Still making change.
It's
That's so
still
good.
making change. It's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. I love it. So I've heard you talk about the importance of being practical and defiant in
Hmm.
equal measure to build realistic pathways for social justice. Can you talk about some of the key lessons you've learned about, that dichotomy of that?
Yes, absolutely. I think sometimes, what happens is we can get very carried away with what we're trying to do, and just, our passion sort of takes the better of us, and we just sort of say, damn it, no, I'm going to bulldoze through this, and they have to listen to me. So I do think that we have to be practical in the sense that it is people in general, we human beings, everyone, every human being in every society, we don't like change. We
Yeah.
like things to be the way they are. It's more comfortable. It's something we know. So what that means is, if you're going to make change happen, you can't basically allow people to feel threatened. You
Yeah.
actually need to make people feel comfortable. You need to make people actually feel like this is something that'll benefit them. So being very, very practical about sort of that human emotion, and not
Yeah.
saying, damn it, they should be doing this.
Yeah.
So I have said, when my colleagues actually say, why aren't they doing it? They should be doing this. They don't use the word should. I think the minute we use the word should,
Mm,
I think people clamp up, because all of a sudden you're telling them that there's something bad about them that they're
right.
not doing, and they become very defensive, right? So it's not that what they should be doing. It's almost like, this is, you do what you do, which is
You
great,
model it.
but how do we expand on it? How do we
Yeah.
actually sort of put some more, sort of more bells and whistles, so it actually will benefit you as well. So I
Yeah.
think it's really that, and I felt that for me, and especially at IAX, I think that was something that I was very mindful of, because in my
Hmm.
first company, I was pretty much, they should be doing this. Why aren't they paying more, for these beautiful pillowcases which were handmade, and
Yeah.
they're willing to pay $3,000 for a Gucci bag, and why won't they pay? So I would feel very indignant about it. But then I realized, you know what? The people who are buying, there are many things. It's not a brand. They're actually buying something where they have a certain budget in mind, and for them, the impact of the beautiful pillows being made some at refugee camp was kind of nice thing, but they actually wanted quality. They wanted actually good stuff. So I think I had to sort of kind of get my arms around that, and be
Yeah.
able to kind of be practical. And I'll tell you, the other thing I always tell people as well is, when you come on this journey where you actually want to do something, where you're changing a system and you're taking on something really big, right? You have to make sure people don't think you're, pretty much you're not out there. So for me, it is very, very important, where I basically sort of make it very, very relatable. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I know where I have to lose a battle to win a war. Okay.
Mm.
And what do I mean
Hmm.
by that? I had to really, really fight, to get the Women's Livelihood Bond off the ground. Really, like, it was a lot of emotional, kind of, and you read it in the book. But I realized that my war was really to get women on, literally on the financial markets, because these bonds are actually listed. They were the first, Women's Livelihood Bond was the first gender bond ever in the history of finance, of the financial
Wow.
market, to be
Wow.
listed on a stock exchange. It was the first gender bond, and also listed on a stock exchange. So it was an incredibly big deal. But for me to be able to go and sell the bond, it was very difficult. And at the end, I sort of decided the best people to actually sell the bond, even with all its kind of wonderful structures around it, were actually men. Because if I walked in and sold this bond, which I saw, people immediately saw risk on my forehead. Okay, I was a woman of color walking in, selling something
Wow.
exotic, and it was impossible to get over that, right? That woman of color, oh my God, what does she know? And
Yeah.
selling this
Something that's totally new.
something totally new, something so funky, and really high finance. And God, no, it doesn't that doesn't work. No, no, thank you. So what I realized was, you know what? I have to take this bullet. I'm the biggest feminist. I am all about equality, equal opportunity. But in this case, I have to take the bullet, get the men, and especially, Caucasian men, to go there and sell it. So actually the bond could be out. And now, 5 years later,
Ah,
um, we're selling this bond left, right, and center with anyone who's selling it. They're women of color, they're people, everyone's selling the bond. It's not even an issue. But I had to take the bullet,
up
in the
front.
first couple of bonds so that people got used to it,
Yeah.
because again, just going with their comfort zone. But at the end, I won the war,
Yeah.
meaning I actually achieved what I wanted to do, which was the war of trying to get women and, in front
Wow.
and center of financial markets. And I did that,
Wow.
right?
So amazing. So amazing, Doreen. What a good story. Um, what message would you like to leave our audience with today as far as how do they apply the principles and the lessons that you've shared really around for finding that, becoming that defiant optimist themselves, just like you, like in those
Yeah.
moments?
I think what I would actually say, to your listeners is it's very, very, very important for us, if you're going to be defined optimists, first and foremost, to believe in yourself and not see yourself as a reflection of what others are thinking of you. I think, if you intensely believe in something, please, you need to go for it because it'll keep on haunting you if you
Yeah.
don't, right?
Yeah.
And then really saying, okay, as I said, be practical about it, how you can get there. And
Yeah.
it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years, and you need to have the patience.
Yeah.
For me, it really was, I mean, think about it. I mean, if I wrote this book 10 years ago, it would be a very different book. And
Yeah.
now I can
Was the
sit
right
with you and
timing.
with a lot of, pride that, what, we were able to sort of create this whole ecosystem, and there's so many defined optimists along with me, who made all this happen. So I think the thing is, we need to have patience. We need to not get influenced by, the whole thoughts of, I always say that, what I would say in some ways the media pushes. So one of the things it's very interesting, and it's also very interesting, I've been asked this now 3 or 4 times, and always it was a male anchor who asked me this, which is, wow, you gave up so much, so you didn't want to be a unicorn. You could have been a unicorn, but you decided not to because you wanted to pull everyone. It takes so long. And I said, what's up with this unicorn? Right? I mean, again, just a very myopic way of thinking that's success, right? Because we have been told that something coming out of Silicon Valley, which is again, it's very male dominated. It's very much sort of that one goal that we're going to focus on this one company, put all this money in, make them grow, don't really think about anyone else, what's happening. Um, again, isn't that sort of an old way of thinking of things? And if you're going to be actually creating a sustainable planet and a planet where we actually everyone has a voice and a right, I mean, shouldn't be thinking more holistically, and shouldn't that be success? I mean, so it was very, very interesting, that I had, people ask me that. They're like, wow, you
Yeah.
have so much patience. And I said, is it patience, or is it actually sort of being
Working within.
practical, that I
Yeah.
actually wanted this
That's
company,
working within the
to do
system
more?
and knowing how to maneuver through that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. So I
Yeah.
think it's important for us, again, not to see ourselves through someone else's lens. It's so
Mm.
important. It's so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. So good. So good. So, where can people connect with you and where can they learn more about your book?
Yeah, so you can buy the book. It's been out now for a couple of weeks, and it's doing quite well. I'm very happy. So you can
Yay.
buy it actually, on Barnes and Nobles, Amazon. But I do encourage, if you can, please buy it from an independent bookstore. We need these bookstores and all over the US. They're the soul of our community. So if you can, please buy it
Go
in your
do that.
independent
Hmm.
bookstore. Um, or if you can't reach any of these, it's also, you can actually, we have a website for the book, definedoptimist.com, and you can reach out to me. You can find out more about the book. And it's, the book is all about all of us, what we can do.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very
Yeah.
happy that you're part of that community.
So good, so good. And I always close with a final question of what 3 pearls of wisdom do you want to leave us with today? You've given us some really great, beautiful wisdom, but just leave us with 3 more little nuggets. Pearls of
3
wisdom.
more nuggets.
Yeah, 3 more pearls of wisdom.
3 more pearls of wisdom. Okay. Okay. So I would say, the number one is having a North Star. I think it's very important for us always to have a North Star. And I think that North Star, again, has to come from you, and it can't be something that someone else does for you, or so it has to come from you. So always have a North Star. I do think that it's very important that if you are going to take on something, you have the tools to do it. So meaning that if you're going to be saying, okay, I'm going to now open up a store, well, have some tools, know how to do it first. So if that means you go and work in a store first, please do that. So it's important to, again, I sound like a mom, but I do think it's important to have that,
Tools are
tools.
important.
And
Yeah.
and I think the third one I would actually say is the fact that, it is very, very important for us to really believe and practice inclusion, because I do think that that's an important part of our life. And that's an important part of being global citizens. And I think, and I always say everything that I do, all my work, inclusion is very much a part of that. And I would like to close with your audience. I will ask them a favor, and which is, if you go to our website, ixglobal.com, you'll see we have a whole new initiative called the Orange Movement. Orange is the color of Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is for women empowerment and gender equality for women and gender minorities. So, and as you can see, I'm wearing orange.
You
So,
are.
so basically, for your listeners, please go and sign the pledge. We have had over 75,000 people who have signed it. The US government, the Australian government, and Canadian government, various governments are also backing it. So where we're actually putting out now bonds, which are called orange bonds. Our women's livelihood bonds are now orange bonds, just like green bonds, and which again is focused on gender equality and climate action, because we say you can't have, climate action without gender equality. So that all is under the umbrella of inclusion, so go and sign the pledge and do something, every day that makes you feel included in the community you're in. So that's my
So good.
third and
So
last.
good. Well, Durreen, thank you so much. What a pleasure it's been to get to know you and to hear some of your stories and your wisdom and all the good things you brought to us today. And congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Cami. Really appreciate it. And thank you for having me on the show. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye. Bye.